Hey, Hyper Spinners, I've got a unique one for you tonight. It's HS Bezel. It allows you to play Hyperspin and 4:3 resolution. Enjoy. All right, Hyper Spinners, we are going to set up a bezel around Hyperspin. We'll preview that real quick.
Let's find your all-time favorite game. All. Classic Arcade. Starting. Let's find your all-time favorite game. Hyper Search. MAME. Choose a MAME game from the wheel. Area 51. Maximum. Argus. Argus. MAME. Good to have you back, retro gamer. Up, up, down, down. Choose from a list of...
All right, guys. Sorry for the loss of focus here, but essentially that HS Bezel was also running with the nested wheel, and we all know the nested wheel can act a little funny if you've got multiple windows open, so I apologize for having HyperHQ open before launching there. So there you have it. You saw everything was in 4:3 resolution, and yeah, everything wasn't stretched out like it is normally. So it is another option in your tool belt, and let's go ahead and get started and show you how to set that up. So first things first, as always, we're going to go to Hyperspin. I'll post the link in the description below, and we're going to download the hsbezel 0012 beta. So you're going to download it. There is a good amount of instructions here below, but it doesn't really talk through, visually speaking, what we're doing and how we're doing it. So if you're like me, you like your eyes on it, and you know, reading's good, but you also like the reassurance visually. So once you've downloaded that, what we're going to do is we're going to the Hyperspin root folder that you have set up, and you're going to drop this into a hsbezel folder, capital H, capital S, capital B, bezel. And you're essentially going to see something that looks similar to this. I don't personally use this every time, but I did want to show you the sort of default bezel, which you saw on the sides here, the Hyperspin version here, and that's the one that I prefer when I do use this. You can also set this up for each system, so I scrolled over to main, and you saw that the bezel had changed, and you can have multiple types of bezels, just like what you would in Rocket Launcher. So you can see the setup is the system name and then underscore default, very similar to what you guys are already used to. And when you open that up, there's different resolutions, and you know, whatever's in these, and then whatever's based on your resolution, it will essentially display that bezel in random if there's multiple bezels in the folder. So you saw in the video one time it was this bezel here with a background, and then this that did not have any additional background. So that's all there is to it here. There is a couple of additional configurations that we've got to do. So I'm going to back up here. I've got this old folder here because when I was configuring this app, I didn't like each system having a different bezel. It seemed kind of busy to me. So when I do use it, I just use the standard Hyperspin bezel. So I just have the underscore default. I have the main folder here with the bezel to kind of just show you guys that, you know, the bezels do change. So I'm going to open up this old folder, which is what I created. And this is just the pack that essentially you guys will be downloading. And what you'll find is Hyperspin bezel folder. You'll find a whole slew of bezels here across 74 different systems. And you know, if you don't like Hyperspin bezel here, you could probably use these on Rocket Launcher and use those bezels. So yeah, take it for what it's worth. So I'm going to go ahead and back up here. That's all there is to it. You're basically just selecting the bezels that you want to see in your system in hsbezel folder. Now there's a couple other things that you want to do. If you go to HyperHQ and you go to main settings and then screen, you're going to make sure that the full screen is not enabled, so just uncheck that. And your window resolution should be 1024 by 768 because that's the native resolution that Hyperspin supports. If you stretch it out any more than that, it might get a little funky, but I believe you can make that adjustment if you want to try it. So we've got two more things that we're going to do. Since we are using the nested wheel, we're going to use main menu changer. I'm going to open that folder up, and if you haven't seen the tutorial yet to set up a nested wheel, go ahead and do that after the video. It's pretty easy to set up, and it's got a large payout. It does take some time to create all the XMLs, but outside of that, it's pretty nifty. So to make this happen with the nested wheel setup, you're going to open up main menu changer, and you're going to go to settings. And then when you see relaunch path, you're just going to select your Hyperspin folder, and then you're going to select the hsbezel.exe file. And that's just how it relaunches. If you do not have the nested wheel setup, which is totally fine, what you'll end up doing is just skipping this step. And whenever you want to launch Hyperspin with a bezel, you'll just click on hsbezel.exe. So this is a good segue here. If you go back to your hsbezel folder where you unzipped all of your contents, you will find a couple extra files in this folder, and it's time to move them to your Hyperspin root folder. And you will see them here on my setup, the hsbezel auto hotkey, hsbezel.exe, and then hsbezel.ini. You'll drop those in there, and we've almost got this set up. If I open up the ini file, there's nothing really that I personally changed. You could run different apps along with Hyperspin, but you guys have already watched my other awesome videos, and you've already seen the auto start script where you are starting multiple apps with Hyperspin. So this is just another option if you don't want to use that startup script that was provided. This does have a little disadvantage here because you can't close the apps here. By default here, you would have to do some additional programming here. Everything else was the same for me. You could change it, but just read through this and it'll tell you the different options here. So I'm going to go ahead and close the ini file. And we've got one more step, guys, and this is it's not necessarily dangerous, but it is something to kind of consider here. So we're going to go to the scripts folder in the Hyperspin root folder, and you're going to see, you're just going to see HS scripts, that folder there. This is sort of the guts behind Hyperspin and the configurations. This by default is what came with Hyperspin. There was nothing that you did to make this happen, but we're now essentially creating a new auto hotkey here, and I can't remember if the auto hotkey.dll was there or not. I feel like it was there, and I just ended up replacing the HS script. I'm like 99% confident. But what I'll do is I'll include both of these files in the mega link in the description below. And this is not path specific, so you can put this on any Hyperspin regardless of drive letter, and it will work. It's just the code behind it. So this allows you to use Hyperspin like the regular Hyperspin without the bezels, or you could use the one with the bezels. So just go ahead and replace that Hyperspin script after you've backed up your original. So I'm going to go back here, and that's what I've done here. So I've just created a folder that says Hyperscript original with no bezel. So this is what came with Hyperspin. You can see it's from 2015. And then you've got another folder which is essentially my my script for HyperBezel here. So when you open it, it's everything that you just saw. It's just in case, you know, I'm always safer than sorry here. I want to keep a backup of the old and the new in case something screws up, but user preference here. So you can ignore these two for your setup, but I will include them in the mega site just as a backup for you guys. But just update that HS script folder and replace that auto hotkey and DLL file. But yeah, after you've backed that up, you've got everything set up. And you know, if you guys choose to, you know, switch back to the regular Hyperspin layout without the bezel, all you've got to do is go back to your main menu changer, which I'm going to go back here and do so myself. I'm going to open up main menu changer exe, go to settings, and then I'm going to change this Hyperspin path by double clicking that row, and I'm going to scroll down, click on Hyperspin, and everything's back how it was, for me at least. So I'm going to close that, and yeah, that's all there is to it, guys, and we'll see you in the next video. I guess to prove my innocence here, I'm going to go ahead and open up Hyperspin here.
The move.
Oh, so this is good. Haha. So to prove
Introducing
my innocence here,
Hyperspin.
there was
Believe the
also
hype.
one extra setup.
Pick any old school system from the wheel and get ready to travel back.
Here, let her be quiet here. There's one other configuration if we want to change this back to non-bezel mode. So step one is to go to main menu changer and you know, change that path to the regular Hyperspin. And the other is to go back to HyperHQ and basically edit the full screen and or window mode. Let's see why HyperHQ. Yeah, there's two instances of HyperHQ. Just as a tidbit for you guys, when HyperHQ ever freezes up, it's probably because there's multiple instances here, and since I do everything in one take, you guys get to see the glory of everything. So there you go. I just hit Control Shift Escape to pull up the kill switch essentially, and end the task without having to push Control Alt Delete. So yeah, here we go. Go back to main settings, go to screen, and I want to go back to full screen. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. And once I do that, everything's going to be back to normal now. You guys kept me honest, which is good. Keep me on the toes. There's the nested wheel.
Let's find your all-time favorite game.
That's it, guys. So go ahead and post comments and subscribe to the channel. And there's going to be more content to follow. Thanks, guys.